இப்போ now Deepa Muthukrishnan, Arulnidhi Deepa Muthukrishnan is going to present the traits of water. Over to you, Mrs. Deepa.
வாழ்க வளமுடன். ஸ்கிரீன் ஷேரிங் ஒரு நிமிஷம் பண்றேன். ஸ்கிரீன் தெரியுதுங்களா?
தெரியுதுங்க. You can proceed.
Okay. To all Sky UK members, very good morning. So today the topic we're going to look at is the greatness of water, நீரின் பெருமை. இதை பற்றி தான் நம்ம பார்க்க போறோம். I'll present mostly in English, and if needed maybe another time I'll present in Tamil as well. So we're going to look at some literature references, what our religion books say about water, and what ancient practices we have about water. And then we'll also look about a statement in the scientific world that water has genetic memory, and how this statement divides the scientific world. We'll look at hidden messages in water, and does water has life force, and is water the oldest scripture in the world? And then we'll also look a little bit about imploded water, what it means, and what's the role of water in copper, and what is Maharishi's messages on water, and how should we treat water. It was a little bit lengthy, but then I'll try to do it a bit more condensed. So when we look at literature references of water, the Rig Veda refers to water as apas, and it calls it as the water. The waters are the foundations of all this universe. And we also have references from Tirukural, and the oldest book of law called Manusmriti mentions water, that God created water first, and then life from it. And in the Holy Quran, water is referenced 63 times, and it mentions water as Alma, and the divine gift with profound wisdom. So water is a divine gift with profound wisdom. So in our culture, like we have some ancient practices that we incorporate in life. Why did the rishis carry water with them always? Why do we get teetham or holy water when we go to temple? Why did we store water in copper vessels and did puja for that? And what about the practice of giving water to visitors who come to the house before even we start a conversation? And we say that if anyone says something, write it in water. And what does that actually mean? And what about when a Holy Communion is given? It's given in holy water. So what is the role of water, and what does all these ancient practices mean? I'm going to introduce you to a famous French immunologist called Jacques Benevist. So he in 1988, what he did was he published an article called The Memory of Water in the journal called The Nature. So what he said was, human antibodies diluted in water to an extent that no single molecule remained, but body still detected as the original antibody. That is, for example, if I give you 1 teaspoon of sugar and I ask you to taste it, and you're able to taste 1 teaspoon of sugar. But if I give you 1 teaspoon of sugar in 1 glass of diluted water, you're still able to taste. But if I give you 1 teaspoon of water diluted in 1 jug of water, you may not be able to taste the sweetness as much as the 1 teaspoon. But if I give you 1 teaspoon of sugar in, like for example, 100,000 liters of water, and I give you only a drop of that water, that 100,000 liters, and then you tell me that you're able to taste from that one drop, you're able to taste that sweetness as 1 teaspoon. So that is what Jacques mentioned through his experiment. And this concept supported homeopathic preparations, the preparations that we get in pipette and the little bottles, and that divided the scientific world heavily at that time. And they even mocked him, saying that now that Jacques is saying that we can email DNA memory from one computer to another computer across the world, he really received like adverse press. And he was listed down for Nobel Prize that year, but all this press put a lot of pressure on the Nature, the journal. And what Nature did is they asked it to perform the same experiment in front of, they asked him to recreate the experiment in front of a panel. And in the panel, they bring a really controversial people. So they bring illusionist, a famous illusionist at that time, John Maddox, and they bring a magician at that time, James Randi, and then they also bring a Nobel Prize fraud expert analyzer. So this is the panel in front of which Jacques is asked to recreate the evidence that he had in his lab. And when he co-authored the original paper, he didn't co-author himself. He co-authored with 4 labs in the world, that is labs from Canada, Italy, Israel and France. So, but still Nature wanted him to recreate it, and in the front of everyone he tries to recreate it, but he fails. And as a result, he loses all his funding for his research. He's kicked out of his lab. He ends up setting his lab experiments in a caravan, and he just, they ask him to remove the paper from the journal, but then he refuses. He just tells that this environment is not the environment that I originally did in the lab. So years later, in 2004 and 5, another book is being published on hidden messages of water. I'll talk about it in a minute. But when he set up his lab in the caravan, when he lost every funding, an assistant joins him called Luc Montagnier. He wins. He's the person who discovered the HIV virus, and he receives Nobel Prize award. And after he receives a Nobel Prize award, what he does is he does another experiment. He considers himself as the higher of Jacques. And what he does is he actually proves in 2009 that aqueous nanostructure derived from DNA sequence of bacteria can actually produce electromagnetic signals. And he proves that. So if you take the structure of aqueous structure of the DNA of bacteria and you subject it to electromagnetic radiation, you can capture the vibration and you can email the vibration from one part of the world to another part of the world, and there you can actually recreate the whole process. He proves what Jacques was mocked at in 2009. And even in 2009, the scientific world bounces back on Montagnier, and he said, and they call him, now you're trying to abuse your Nobel Prize and use it to just create more controversies on the memories of water. And then now UNESCO is under pressure in 2014, and what they decide is they decide to host a meeting in 2014 on the memory of water. Again, the press criticizes UNESCO on even bringing absurd meeting on the memory of water. So then in 2004, Japanese author and businessman, he publishes a book called The hidden messages in water. So that year, it was the bestseller of the New York Times. And what he says is to understand the water is to understand the cosmos, the marvels of nature and the life itself. And he does publish a couple of papers as well. And what Dr. Masaru Emoto does is he takes samples from different parts of the world and he does experiments. He takes the water samples and then he freezes the water samples and then he analyzes the crystals under crystal analyzer. And he notices that different water samples from different parts are able to produce different crystals. And one particular water from the dam in Tokyo is not able to form crystal at all. So this is the water from the dam. So he wonders why water from like untouched areas where holy places and waters from springs and nature, then why water that passes through cities are not able to form that much of crystals. And he does a little experiment. He gets the same sample of water from the Tokyo river, which is in the middle of the city, and then he gathers Buddhist worshippers, and they all do a prayer around that water sample. And then he analyzes the water, and they're able to form beautiful crystals after the prayers. The same water sample that was not able to form crystals are now forming the perfect, beautiful crystals. So he finds that something that's there in the power of the word, in the power of the thought. And then he later does further experiments called rice water experiments. You can read more about it. And then he also analyzes water in different words. He analyzes water. So if we say, do it to the water, and if we say, let's do it, and if we say, you're a fool, or if we say, thank you, how water crystals changes. And he also does experiments in several ways as well, introducing Beethoven's music to water and introducing heavy metal music to water. And if we say Adolf Hitler to water, then the water reacts in this way. If we say Mother Teresa to water, the water forms a different form of crystals. So his main intention was to give messages to people that how you talk to children actually matters. If you say in a commanding way, then that's how they're going to react. And because he's an author and he writes on everything, and he ended up doing lots of experiments on water. So he was called as a pseudoscientist. They didn't accept his findings or his all this. They mocked his experiments, and till date, the rice water experiments have been recreated by various parts of the world. On internet, you can see so many experiments being recreated with the rice water experiment, but they didn't actually acknowledge his experiments. And but now in what we have is we have aerospace unit in Germany, which is actually doing the same experiments which Masaru Emoto did in 2004. So again, the ancient practices, whether it was a boon or a curse or a blessing, perhaps water was used every time to register the memory when rishis offered the boon or curse. We get a little water, a spoon of water, and that is possibly the memory of the divine. And then maybe whoever is visiting our house, we want them to first acclimate, get adjusted to the energy of the house. So maybe is that why we are giving water to people who are visiting our house? And storing water, we'll probably look into it a little bit deep further down the line. And holy water, the meaning of saying written in water perhaps is the most strongest memory. So if you're written in water, it is registered forever. So water's got the indefinite memory, is what we say. So this water has life force. So whatever water that we drink, does the tap water in the cities that we are using, does it have less life force than the natural water? So is the prana available from the water that we drink? So we'll look at it a little bit more. So this is Dr. Konstantin Korotko, and he's still alive and he's still doing a lot of research on water. So again, in 2016, he does further experiments. He's a professor of biophysics in St. Peterborough University in USA, and he's published over like 40 publications, and he's still doing lots of research. And what he did is he showed the energetics of water. So he took ordinary water and he took water from a place from peninsula where there's little human contact to that water, and he subjected that to electromagnetic field. So anything that enters electromagnetic field will emit light. So the greater the energy, the brighter the light.
And yesterday,
and the water from the ordinary water that entered the electromagnetic field, and the peninsular water also entered the electromagnetic field. So the peninsular water produced around 40,000 times more energetically active waves compared to the ordinary drinking water, and the crystals that were formed from the peninsular water was close to perfection. So he concludes that water is actually a reflection of its environment, and it stores water, it stores information indefinitely. So is water the oldest scripture in the world? And remember the references in the literature. Water is as old as the universe, is what the Vedas are saying. So why do we feel fresh and rejuvenated when we take bath in waterfalls? And what is the difference between water from its natural source and its forced status? And what changes happen to it? To understand that, we need to understand some basic spiraling motion. So that there are some references to say that spiraling motion is fundamental to life, and it's connected to intuition, wisdom. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures, few pictures, and then I want you to think what's the motion of these pictures. So this is a nautilus, and it's a type of mollusk, and this is ram's horns. And then water, why does water take a path like this? What is it about the fingerprints? Why are hurricanes? How do hurricanes move? And if any of you can think of what is the structure of the DNA double helix, how does the universe move? So all this is connected to a spiraling motion. In 1996, they with the spiraling motion technology, what they study more of this, and then they invent a device called Vortex Energizer device. Looks very fancy terminology, but you stay with me and you'll be surprised what it is. So there's more terminologies now to say imploded water, fractal water, structured water. And what is the significance of all of this? And does it change the way that water we drink. So with the urbanization and modern cities creation and everything, we are forcing the waters the dissolved oxygen, and it restores the energy. So implosion, as a result of understanding this spiraling motion, centripetal motion, and the implosion effects that it brings, they invent the device called Vortex Energizer device. Does this remind you of anything? Just have a little think. We've all seen this in different forms. So they bring in, invented in 1996. And once water is subjected through this implosion device, water is able to reorganize itself into hexagonal molecules, and it's able to pass more freely. And this is the technology used in hydroponics. And now we have more evidences to say that we can use less water, because water is absorbed more effectively in aquaculture and using the agriculture using water, which is a branch called the hydroponics. So this device we have reminded me of the immersion electric heater that we used to use in olden days, and we used to have a copper bucket, and we used to put the immersion device in it, and it's got all the spirals of it. So we have used technology in our cultural ways in the past in different ways. So what is best to store water? What about copper claims? Again, there are 4 papers on copper and its effect on water. So an experiment done in India, this one is from what they used 4 different types of bacteria. They put it in a copper pot, and then they stored it for 16 hours. They used E. coli, they used cholera samples. They put everything in a copper pot, and then after 16 hours they analyzed the water from the pot, and they're not able to trace or nothing is growing in that water after 16 hours, but they are able to see that the alkalinity of that water is changed, which possibly could be the reason, is what they conclude. And in 2013, in US, they perform a really well-designed study, and then what they use is they use copper-coated surfaces, copper alloy surfaces in the touch points in a critical care unit. So wherever the patient sits, where the patient holds, the meal tray, computer where the staff touch, the drip stand, doorknobs, they use copper-coated places, and then they do this in 650 ICU beds, and then they compare rooms with copper-coated gadgets and equipments, and then rooms without copper-coated equipments. Then they are able to prove that there is significant reduction in hospital-acquired infection, MRSA, and other infections that you can actually develop in a critical care environment. Those are the references for the papers. So we had the knowledge in ancient days. We had the knowledge of all of this. We used heavy metals like gold, silver, and copper cutleries in our practices. We used copper doorknobs in our homes. Until 1980, even in UK, all the water pipes were made of copper, and only after that we had plastic water pipes. And this is called the oligodynamic effect of heavy metals. Basically what it does, it can have a lethal effect on the bacterial cell wall, and it can also increase the alkalinity, as we saw from the previous experiment, and it energizes the water from what we've seen in the past in the hydroponics. It energizes the water. Excuse me. And there's also Ayurvedic references that water balances the 3 doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and it positively charges the body. So what about copper toxicity? If the recommendations that we see is storing water, excuse me, storing water overnight and around 16 hours of water storage. And then if you're really concerned about copper toxicity, then not to drink more than 700 mLs of daily water stored in that copper. But the daily recommended allowance for copper is around 1.2 milligram. But when it comes to toxicity, this is from NHS Health, levels have not been determined. Up to 80 milligrams shouldn't actually cause any harm with copper supplementation. So even if you store water for 16 hours, the amount of copper dissolved in that water will only be like few parts per million, and even that few parts per million can give you a very protective effect, is what they say from the references. So what is Maharishi's messages on water? What about the Kayak exercises that we do? Remember the vortex movement and the spiraling motions. It's all about the implosion. It's all about bringing the energy from externally to internally. And when we before we eat or before we drink any water, we also practice the Kayakalpa, and that is to bring the energy to the same energy as to our body. And what about the Kapalapati and Jitali Pranayama? That these exercises are incorporated to help relieve the sinuses and the good flow of energy, and then the Jitali Pranayama helps to control the muscles of the throat to avoid aspiration, or to have proper swallowing movements really. And also he incorporates mudras into practice that streamlines the 5 elements in the body. We incorporate rain blessing in every single meditation that we do. This rain blessing came into practice when a group of people came to Maharishi after a severe drought, and there was no rain at all. So they all gathered and they did a meditation, and then since then he incorporated rain blessing at the end of meditation to be done with every single meditation. In Panchabhuta Navagraha meditation and in Panchendriya meditation, we are blessing water. We are trying to control the tongue and the amount, everything that the tongue is involved in. And he also advised never bow the head or raise up your head when you're drinking water. That's actually the right way of drinking water. And drinking in sips rather than in gulps. Again, this is to avoid too much of air getting into the body. So all the messages that he tells us has got some science in it as well. So today I've brought you some of the greatness of water that came to my consciousness. And I want you to decide. I'm not going to say what is right or what is wrong. We have seen the scientific world being divided. Because it comes from complementary therapy, because it comes from alternative medicine. Till date, we have around 2040 published papers, but they call whether it was Jack's experiment or whether it was Montague's experiments, or whether it is biophysics, or whether it is hydroponics, implosion technology. Still they criticize it as pseudoscience. So I'll leave it to your consciousness to decide, should we store water rather than drinking it from direct sources so that it get acclimatized to the energy of the family. How to store water? Take a moment to show gratitude before drinking. And also a warm glass of water in the morning and before bed is what Maharishi advises as well. How much to drink water? It's typically guided by your tongue really. And bless the water, show gratitude and positivity, and it will treat you the same as you treat it. So treat it well because you are made of water. Before I conclude, the world is made of around 70% of water. And then our human body is made of 73% of water. Our brain is said to be made of around 70% of water. The number of thoughts that arise is around 60,000 to 70,000 in a day. So there are some relations between the water and what we think, how we treat it. So treat it well because you're actually made of it. So be blessed by the divine. Thank you for listening.
Arumiyana Parivu, Deepa. It's really wonderful to have such a vast knowledge of the hidden treasures of water and its utility in our day-to-day life. Thank you for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Towards the end, there is a video that's like an experiment, so you can watch it at your own time. It's fascinating to see that video, but you can watch it in your own time. Thank you.
Can you play it now, Deepa?
Okay. I'll just play parts of the video.
I'm not sure if the settings are in a way that we can all see it.
No, mind, you can share the link and we can just look into it.
Are you able to see it or is it not?
No, only the link is being displayed. We are not able to see the video.
Okay, you can watch it. It's just a quick 6 minutes video. It's an experiment done by Nali water spirals, really. So you can watch it in your own time. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepa. Well done. And Maharishi has also said something about water. And there was a query asked, Swamiji, நான் கண்டுகொண்டேன் நாராயணன் எனும் நாமம் அப்படின்னு வந்து ராமானுஜர் வந்து பேசினாரு. அதனுடைய ஆக்சுவல் அர்த்தம் என்ன அப்படின்னு சொல்லி சுவாமிஜிட்ட கேட்டிருப்பாங்க போல. அந்த நேரத்துல வந்து சுவாமிஜி கொடுத்த எக்ஸ்பிளனேஷன் அப்படின்னு வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, மனித உயிர் இல்லைன்னா எல்லா ஜீவராசிகளுக்கும் வந்து அடிப்படை தேவை வந்து தண்ணி. இருட்டுக்குள்ள வந்து நம்ம வந்து ஒரு விதைய புதைச்சு வச்சு அதுக்கு தண்ணி ஊத்தணும் அப்படின்னா அது எப்படி உருவாகுது அப்படின்னு வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, மூளை அதுக்கு வந்து அதாவது இன்னர் இன்டெலிஜென்ஸ், மூளை, தண்டு, இலை, கிளை, அரும்பு, முட்டு, பூ, காய், இப்படி ஒண்ணா வந்து அது வந்து மாற்றமாகுது. இதுக்கு முக்கிய தேவை அப்படின்னு வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா H2O. அதுல இருந்து ஆக்சிஜனை வந்து எடுத்து பிரிக்கிறதுக்கு எல்லா ஜீவராசிகளுக்கும் வந்து பேஸ் வந்து தண்ணீர். இப்போ நாரம் பிளஸ் அயனம், நாராயணம். நாரம்னா தண்ணி, அயனம்னா மாற்றம். அப்போ நாராயணம் அப்படின்னா உயிர்ல இருக்கக்கூடிய அத்தனை மாற்றங்களும் நீரால தான் வந்து தோன்றியது அப்படின்னு சொல்லி மகரிஷி வந்து சொல்லியிருப்பாரு. அதாவது நீர்ம பொருள் தான் திடப்பொருளுக்கு மூலம். அப்போ நீருக்கு மூலமா இருக்கிறது வந்து இறைநிலை. அப்போ இறைநிலைய வந்து உருவாக்கி சொல்றதுக்குத்தான் நாரா அயனமான உன்னை நான் கண்டுகொண்டேன். அப்போ அந்த பிரணவ பொருள் அப்படின்றது வந்து குறிக்கிறது வந்து மௌனம். இப்போ நம்ம புரியாதீத தவத்துல வந்து பண்ணது, we are actually in one with the absolute space. அப்போ பிரணவ பொருள் அப்படின்றத குறிக்கிறதுக்கு வந்து அப்படின்ற அந்த மகர மெய்ய வந்து யூஸ் பண்ணுவாங்க. அந்த நானும் அதுவாக இறைவனாகவே இருக்கிறேன் அப்படின்றதுக்கு தான் நாம் பிளஸ் நாமம். இப்ப கண்டுகொண்டே நாராயணன் என்னும் நாமம் அப்படின்றது வந்து உயிராற்றல் உருவாறதுக்கு உண்டான அந்த மூல மந்திரம் அப்படின்றத நான் கண்டுகொண்டேன். இத ஜபிக்கிறவங்களுக்கு வந்து எந்த விதமான பாவங்களும் அண்டாது அப்படின்றது வந்து தன்னுடைய குருநாதர்கிட்ட இருந்து தான் கற்றுக்கிட்ட அந்த மந்திர வித்தைய வந்து மக்கள் அனைவரும் புரிவர சொன்னதுதான் ராமானுஜர். அதைத்தான் மகரிஷியும் வந்து அதுக்கு விளக்கம் இவ்வளவு அழகா கொடுத்திருப்பாரு. ரொம்ப நன்றி தீபா. இட் இஸ் ரியலி ஒண்டர்ஃபுல் எக்ஸ்பிளனேஷன் அபவுட் வாட்டர்.
சாரி, கொஞ்சம் ரொம்ப சயின்டிபிக்கா போன மாதிரி இருந்தது. பட் ஐ ட்ரை டு ஐ வாண்டட் டு பிரிங் தட் நாலேஜ். லைக் எப்படி சயின்டிபிக் வேர்ல்டு டிவைட் ஆயிருக்கு, எப்படி வந்து இன்னமும் அதை வந்து ஒத்துக்க மாட்டாங்க. பட் we have to incorporate both complementary therapy and ancient practices, and we need to take it to our consciousness and then decide really. I think கொஞ்சம் நிறைய questions வந்திருக்குன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். I don't know whether we have time to.
No, you can answer, because these type of sessions may not happen often. So if there are any queries, anyone can just ask Aruniti Deepa.
Vazhalamudan Deepa. It was an excellent presentation. Actually, I just wanted to, could you please retouch on the toxicity which you talked about? I guess even if we store it for 16 hours or more in a copper container, we won't even reach the limit. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So,
okay.
So in the 2012 experiment done in India, that is where they did store the water for diurogenic water for 16 hours, and when they analyzed the copper from the water, it just increased by 0.77 parts per million. So the recommended யூகேலே எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம்னா recommended allowance வந்து 1.2 milligram தான். அண்ட் டாக்ஸிசிட்டின்னு சொல்லும் போது ரெஃபரன்சஸ் வந்து 80 மில்லிகிராம் வரைக்கும் போனா கூட டாக்ஸிசிட்டி வந்து சேஃபா தான் இருக்கும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு வந்து NHS இங்கிலாந்து வந்து இஸ் மேட் ரெஃபரன்ஸ் இன் தேர் திங். ஸோ 1.2 மில்லிகிராமுக்கும் அதுல வந்து காப்பர் 16 ஹவர்ஸ் ஸ்டோர் பண்ணாலும் 0.77 பார்ட்ஸ் பெர் மில்லியன் தான் இன்க்ரீஸ் ஆகுது. அதுதான் நம்மளுடைய ஏன்ஷியன்ட் நாலேஜ். நம்ம வந்து டெய்லி அதை வந்து கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சமா சிறிதளவா சேர்த்துக்கிறோம் நம்ம அந்த டெய்லி யூஸ் பண்றது. பட் காப்பர் டாக்ஸிசிட்டி பத்தின ரெஃபரன்ஸ் எல்லாம் வந்து எப்படி அந்த காப்பர் டாக்ஸிசிட்டியை கண்டுபிடிக்கிறாங்கன்னா, தே ஆர் யூசிங் யூஎஸ்ல வந்து எப்படி அந்த ஒரு வில்லேஜ்ல வந்து காப்பர் பொல்யூஷன் இருக்கு, அந்த காப்பர் பொல்யூஷன் மூலமா, அதாவது கெமிக்கல் இண்டஸ்ட்ரீஸ்ல இருந்து வந்த காப்பர் பொல்யூஷன்ல காப்பர் டாக்ஸிசிட்டி, அதனால வர லிவர் டாக்ஸிசிட்டினா நாசியா, வாமிட்டிங் அண்ட் லிவர் டேமேஜ், இதுதான் வந்து காப்பர் டாக்ஸிசிட்டி. So references are made mainly to chemical pollution rather than storing water and copper. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Valga Valamudan.
Thank you, Deepa, very much. I really enjoyed this, bringing together the ancient ideas and combining it with modern day thoughts on it. I just wondered about what your thoughts were on drinking alkaline water. We hear of it not only from celebrities but other sort of individuals on occasion. And I wondered whether you had any thoughts on it, just like drinking hot water first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, etc. Some people seem to be advocating that.
And be blessed by the divine Dolores G. And is alkaline water you refer to adding like
sodium bicarbonate or something like that? I don't know for sure. But I've seen people carrying, not only sports people, but some individuals who are sort of who look in that direction of overdoing, perhaps, what they take in, what they eat, how they eat, what they drink, etc.
There are practices like in modern world, like using like lemon rings and fruit rings to alkalize the water.
Acidic rather than alkaline. Is lemon acidic rather than alkaline?
Sorry, say that again. I'm not able. I missed it.
Sorry, is lemon drinking, water flavored with lemon and so on? Is that not acidic?
It is acidic, but the concept is to try and make it alkaline. The using the rings to that is the concept they use. But then alkaline water, when it's stored in copper, it alkalinizes the water. Is what experiments are found, and that water is better bioavailable, is what they say. I'm not sure about the acidic, and this concept goes back to the concepts of using alkaline diet as well. I need to do some more references on that. But from copper associated alkalization, it does have this oligodynamic effect on the any bacterial cell wall. But otherwise, like it's not advisable to use lemon or like drink it throughout the day, because of it can cause damage to the teeth. But whereas if it's stored in copper vessels, perhaps the alkalinity of the water can change, and that maybe is a better way rather than using alkalinized water. And the Vortex Energizer also is used, and I think there was Michelin star restaurant in London that used the Vortex Energizer, and people visited the restaurant and they really experienced that there's something in that water, and it's also meant to alkalinize and energize the water as well. So our knowledge now is something to do with, okay, this is what we know, and perhaps we probably will expand that knowledge with more information coming in. But as of now, alkalinized water seems like helping us, but there are different ways of alkalinizing it, and that matters.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Be blessed by the divine.
Hello, Deepak. Has a quick one, Mr. Thiru here. Those days we used to keep in a big pan, a big pot, clay pot.
Yeah.
How is that compared with the copper?
I've not actually looked into it, but I think again, whether it's kept in copper, I just feel that the aeration is better in that copper, so in the pot, and pot is again made from earth material, and water is one of the 5 elements. So there could be some association between the elements, and then the pot water is more cooler. But then I've not looked into any scientific evidence or anything regarding to that. But from literature, from references, I've seen stainless steel, copper, and brass. Those were used, and before. In between, I think we also used pot or clay. Also, in the history, the storage has changed depending on how wealthy and how poor we were. Like it's just alternating between ancient ways. In some sections we used pot, some sections we used copper and gold and silver vessels. And we've also used copper coins. So yes, when it comes to pot storage, I've not looked at any evidence or references, but I'm just associating it with elements of the nature.
Vanakkam.
Srinivasan sir, you can just throw it.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir. Madam, I think in the copper, sometimes in the green அடியில தண்ணி வச்சா வந்துருது, அதனால குடிக்கிறது சேஃப் இல்ல அப்படின்ற மாதிரி ஏதோ சொல்லிட்டு இருந்தாங்க. அதனால
Exactly, sir. That is something we need to look at definitely. So copper oxidizes when it comes into contact with the air. So adukada we had a practice in the copper vessel irundhalum we have to, and the pulley pot we have to clean it with எலுமிச்சப்பழம் புளி அதெல்லாம் போட்டு நம்ம வந்து அதை வந்து பளபளன்னு இருந்தாதான் அதுல வந்து ஸ்டோர் பண்ணும். If it is got a green color in it, then that's oxidization. So we shouldn't be that doesn't allow it to penetrate. So if we are using copper vessels, then we have to regularly clean it with whatever you have, but it should be shiny, and then you can store it. Shouldn't have that greenish layer coating on it. So if it's there, then you won't get the penetration effects, I think. Hope I've answered it. Be blessed by the divine.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thanks for the clarification.
And if anyone has any answers to these questions as well, because whatever I've referenced, I've shared, but if anyone else has any answers to share on the pot or anything from your side, I would like to hear as well.
I think even Dr. B.M. McDay was saying that if we have water drink from the silver, there are good benefits. It can resolve upper respiratory problems, which I felt even the silver nanoparticles are beneficial. I'm just trying to understand. You have any thoughts on that?
Silver reference போட்டிருந்தாங்க, but because I wanted to concise, I just confined to only copper here. But in yogic or Ayurvedic reference, copper, silver, and stainless steel as well, they have said that it can be good sources to store rather than any other storage.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yes, any more questions, please? Yes, VS.
Sorry, I was going to ask for your email address if that's possible, and we could send you, any queries or additional information we might glean ourselves.
I'm in the group. I know I've been a bit less active these days with the COVID pressures, but any questions you can send. You can message me through WhatsApp or through Shakti. I'll also send a presentation and we can share it today with you all. Anytime you can contact me with any queries about this, and I'll refer and I'll let you know.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Deepa. Much appreciated.
And there is a whole library of heavy metal usage. So this is a place where they make churanam and all the medicines, and using all of that in mass production for Siddha and Ayurveda. And the library references, these are references from really decades back, and the literature books, I don't even think that we have people who can even read that. That amount of references are there, whether it's translated to maybe Tangrajana can add more to it, and then Navapashanam, in the Madriyana heavy metals usage allow, and the people in ancient knowledge, ancient wisdom knew how to use it, not in and what's the dosage of it, and there are really huge number of references on all of that. But when it comes to using it in daily routine life, the way the modern medicine is like, we need evidence, we need more evidence, we need published evidence, and whether we translated that, we don't know yet. So that's where we're not syncing. The modern medicine and the ancient medicine is not syncing. But if you look into detail, every hematology la kuda Rolex syndrome அப்படின்ற ஒரு syndrome, அந்த syndromeலயும் வந்து RBCs வந்து clump ஆயிடும். So when they gave structured water, then they were able to see the RBCs when the buoyancy it's available to deliver oxygen. So there is something that in ancient practice that we haven't really transferred that knowledge correctly to modern medicine, is what I would say. So with heavy metals as well, maybe Tangrajana can add more.
Honestly speaking, நீங்க கொடுத்ததுல ஒரு விஷயம் வந்து எனக்கு தெரியாது. So உங்க ரிசர்ச் பக்கத்துல we have nothing. So whatever the queries that SV has asked, it is something new area where there is vast knowledge to be explored. So I think as a person who can dig more, you both can give out more to this community. Thank you.
We'll try. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I was a little bit skeptical, like too much scientific but I hope you all enjoyed it. And thank you so much. Varga Vayagam. May you all be blessed by the divine water. Thank you.
Thank you, Deva. Ganga, can you conclude it, please?
Thank you, Deva. It's a very interesting and very scientific, as well as how you connect that scientific with their what you call our religious and beliefs. It's a good one. I think it's worthy of the people who are scientists started to relate how the interpretation of the traditional methodologies people forget. I think it's a good one to start with. Hopefully, in coming days, more and more people will start to interpret the chemistry with our traditional Hinduism, or for that matter, yoga. Yes, it's a good start, and because of these new topics and variety of views coming from our members, has created our group is growing very fast, and every week we are getting more and more people are attending our meditation as well as the lectures. For that, I need to thank a new generation of sky teachers like Dr. Sakti, Tangaraj, Deva. Hope you all take us, the UK Trust, to another level, and especially the Lancashire group is very proactive, and even during this COVID, they are doing very well. வாழ்க வளமுடன், be blessed. Thank you for all, and hope we will continue to grow.
Deepa, are you publishing in your paper?
சார் நான் இதுல ரிசர்ச் பண்ணல. என்னுடைய ரிசர்ச் ஹெமட்டாலஜில நான் வந்து இத ரெஃபரன்ஸ் பண்ணி சொன்னேன்.
I would like a handouts if you can. That obviously.
I'll send the presentation over, sir. I'll send the presentation over. Thank you.
இல்ல அப்ப கோப்பியா கலக்க நிலாவே ஆச்சு உங்களோட ரூமா.
Okay. With this we can conclude. ஐயா உலகநல வாழ்த்து சொல்லி முடிச்சுப்போமா? சக்தி, can you?
Okay. Yes.
உலகமெல்லாம் பருவமழை ஒத்தபடி பெய்யட்டும், உழவரெல்லாம் தானியத்தை உவப்புடனே பெருக்கட்டும், பல தொழில்கள் புரிகின்ற பாட்டாளி உயரட்டும், பகுத்துணர்வில் தொகுத்துணர்வு பண்பாட்டை உயர்த்தட்டும், கலகங்கள் போட்டி பகை கடந்தாட்சி நடக்கட்டும், கல்லாமை கடன் வறுமை கழகங்கள் மறையட்டும், நலவாழ்வை அளிக்கும் மெய் ஞான ஒளி வீசட்டும், நம் கடமை அறவாழ்வின் நாட்டத்தே சிறக்கட்டும், நம் கடமை அறவாழ்வின் நாட்டத்தே சிறக்கட்டும், நம் கடமை அறவாழ்வின் நாட்டத்தே சிறக்கட்டும். வாழ்க வையகம், வாழ்க வையகம், வாழ்க வளமுடன்.
வாழ்க வளமுடன்.
வாழ்க வளமுடன். நன்றி.